4, 3, 2, 1. And we are live again. Welcome once again to Live Stream Stories. Today, we have a special guest calling in all the way from New York City, Ariel Viera, who is a filmmaker and a live stream videographer. And he does this really cool thing, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. I have this video queued up that is a video that he made, and he basically takes people on walking tours of any city that he happens to be in. And so let me cue this up and have him tell you what he does. So just a second here. Got to turn this on.
Growing up in Jackson Heights, Queens, along the 7 train, I remember looking at views of the downtown Manhattan skyline with wonder. And then 3 years ago, I started my biggest endeavor yet, Urbanist. It's a Facebook Live show where I take over 41,000 viewers to every single corner of New York City. I'm Ariel Viera. I'm a filmmaker and storyteller. I've been living in New York City my entire life. It's in my blood, and I know it like the back of my hand. Let me show you. And here's our first stop. Follow me. The Mysterious Bookshop. Here you'll find everything about crime, mystery, and espionage. The oldest fence in all of New York City. Originally, the fence had British crowns on top, but in 1776, American revolutionaries came and sawed them off. And according to legend, they smelted them into cannonballs and shot them at British ships. Inside the historic 30 Water Street is one of the best bars in the entire world. Let's go. At least they won all of these accolades.
All right.
Great clip.
Right. So welcome to the show, Ariel.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Yeah, it's really great. So I just, by way of getting started here, I would really like to hear you explain, your background is as a filmmaker. And somewhere in the much more recent past, you decided to start doing live streaming and to basically create this ongoing production, this ongoing regular series where you're walking people through different parts of New York City and different parts of other cities that you visit. And how did you make that choice? How did you decide, first of all, to move to the live video as a medium?
So actually, my start with filmmaking coincided with my start with live video. I've always wanted to be a filmmaker, but I delayed a long part of my life as I worked in tech and media. And then I decided to start vlogging back in 2016, being inspired by creators like Casey Neistat. While at that same time, I was a social video manager in Vox Media, taking care of their social video distribution. And that's Vox with a VOX, not the F. What happened exactly that year was that Facebook started paying major media companies to do live video. And the vertical I was working with in Vox was Curbed, which was about real estate, cities, architecture, and design. And they didn't have any video team on hand. So I volunteered since I already had community management experience and also a social video experience. I just decided to say, hey, we could do both at the same time. We could build a community and we could do social video on live video. And that's the very inception of the walking tours, because live video seems so attractive, not only because Facebook was giving the big bucks to these media companies, but beyond that, for me personally, vlogging was a bit tedious because I was staring into a big camera lens alone in public. It just felt so weird. But the moment I went live, I saw the little hearts, the little thumbs up, the comments of like, ooh, oh, cool, that's a park, or oh, look at that bench, or ooh, that seems like a good coffee shop. I just felt like, wow, I can make videos and have people join me at the same time, and I don't need to edit. It just felt like the greatest thing ever. And that's what got me hooked on live video initially.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so you're talking about that, as people are coming on when you're live, and you're on a tour of a particular place, how much of what you choose to do is directed by people who are watching? If they go, oh, that's a cool bar, or oh, look at that gallery, do you follow those cues?
See, that's a great question. I think that gets to the very heart of what makes live video better or different from a vlog or a TV show. So You can do a live video where it's very meticulously planned, which I've done before, which is a set tour with the set amount of stops, with a kind of a script or very extensive notes, and that's it. I'm done. 40 minutes. That's it. But I don't like doing those type of live videos too much. I find live videos to be more engaging when they can run a little bit longer because there's some input from the audience. And sometimes the audience asks, hey, can we see that little thing 1 block away? And I'm like, sure. Or they ask me, hey, can you zoom in on say the rooftop of this church? And that's, I think, what makes live video powerful, that it's not merely just me, the host, doing a show, but the audience is basically the filmmakers, the producers as well. They're also the storytellers because they tell me their own stories about the places we explore.
Yeah, that's cool. So, okay, well, let's just describe, like, when you're out and about,
yeah,
how elaborate is your setup? Like, what are you actually using to go live with?
That's a great question. A lot of people always think like I have some super crazy elaborate setup.
Right, and we're not talking like you're Gary Vee and you have this entourage of videographers who follow you wherever you go.
Precisely, yeah. People always have the assumption that I'm a huge media company, and I do that. I do that kind of on purpose. I have the brand name and everything, but I do 3 types of setups. The one I do 95% of the time is my iPhone with my gimbal, which is the DJI Osmo Mobile, and I have a wireless mic, just so to have extra good audio. And that's it. That's the entire setup. I use right now Prism Live Studio, and they have access to Restream, so I'm able to stream both to Facebook and YouTube, which is awesome.
Oh wow, yeah.
And then the other 2 setups I do is a DSLR camera. I have partnered up with Live View, and I've done DSLR. Basically, it's just carrying either a tripod or on the huge gimbal and walking around with DSLR. But that's a much more heavier setup, and also it's not so easy to do it when it's walking. But if it's like a live concert, then I'll maybe do a DSLR. Mm-hmm. And my third setup is 360 live video.
Oh, nice.
It used to be a little bit easier with the older 360 cameras that Insta360 used to do. But for some reason, they're putting less emphasis on live streaming for some reason. So I haven't done so much 360 live streaming in the past year.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So when you now, I have never used Prism. So is Prism a mobile app? Is that how it works? How does it hook up with your phone?
Yeah, so Prism Live Studio is now a mobile app, and it has basically all the main functionalities of Wirecast is now in the app. So I'm able to have video, which could be picture-in-picture or full screen. I could do photos, I could do music, and I could do text that's both dynamic or just static text. And I could do multiple streams at the same time.
Cool, right. So, and that's through Restream. Now I'm just going to pause for a second and acknowledge Restream. Because first of all, Restream is responsible for the show. They're the sponsor of this show, and they happen to be one of my current favorite tools to use. And it's because of just what you're talking about. When you're using Restream, you don't have to limit yourself to just one destination. They have actually up to 30 different choices of places that you could be streaming to simultaneously. So like, for instance, this show right now, this stream is going live to Facebook, and it's going live to LinkedIn, and it's going live to YouTube, and it's going live to Twitter. And even within that, on Facebook, we're going live to my profile page, my business page, my group page, Restream's page, et cetera. Like, if whatever page you have access to, you can be streaming to all those locations. So if you have a private group and you want to stream right into them, they're really good. And this is really interesting because it's the first time I've really heard about how simple it is to multicast from a mobile phone. And this just seems like a tremendous advantage of doing this kind of live presentation.
It really is, yeah. And it
Yeah.
led to exponential growth on YouTube, for example, for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So, and let's just segue into that. Like, how have you, and you've actually acquired a really nice following, and how did that happen? Like, what was the time frame? And, how did you, what are the things that you've been doing to attract new people to the streams that you're creating?
So I've been running Urbanist for a little bit over 4 years now, and for those first 4 years, I've been exclusively on Facebook, and just the past few months, I've been doing YouTube as well. So remind me of your question again.
Well, the question is simply just what are you doing to
Oh,
achieve audience growth? Like, there's got to be, like, when you were starting, we all start from zero, right?
exactly. How did I grow initially?
And so we're going,
Yeah.
like, I'll go live on Facebook,
Yeah.
and maybe if I'm on Restream, I'll go Facebook and YouTube together. And in the beginning, I'm talking to a very small audience. And you now have, over 10,000 some people following you on Facebook, and then more on YouTube. So you've got a pretty good following going. And I'm just wondering, like, how did that happen? Where did those people come from? How did they find you?
So to me, live streaming is like the theater. Theater sucks when there's only 2 people in the audience. It sucks for the actors.
It sure does.
It sucks for the audience as well. So
right.
it's also a live streamer's job to find their audience. And on Facebook, that doesn't happen organically via discoverability like YouTube. YouTube, a video will pop up because people are searching for New York. But on Facebook, there's no real discovering videos. So the way I got my videos out was to coordinating shares with major Facebook groups and major Facebook pages.
Oh,
so
yeah.
In the very beginning of Urbanist, I collaborated with companies like Atlas Obscura, City Lab, which is part of the Atlantic, and New York.com was another major one. And these companies had upwards of 300,000 followers on their pages. So they would share my live video while I'm live.
Wow.
So I had not only access to my audience, but I had access to theirs,
right.
which was kind of crazy to think about. And it was a very good hack to grow very quickly on Facebook. And the proposal that I basically gave to all of them is like, hey, I'm sure your followers would love to learn about the history of New York and so place. Would you care to share? And usually they would. Because I was branded as a show, not branded as like Ariel Viera's travel vlog. So they were more comfortable with sharing from another media brand. And then B, for these media brands, the more content, the better, especially on Facebook. So they also get all that sweet engagement on their page and sweet reach on their page without doing any work. So that's why that proposal worked very well in the beginning. And then after a while, it was a little bit harder to share with major pages and groups because Facebook, I think, received a little bit less attention from major media groups, especially in the live video space. So I just grew more organically. I just continued sharing it with major Facebook groups. That was the big kicker, the Facebook groups. And now they're becoming even bigger now. So I focus on sharing with big groups that are relevant to the live video, either while live, and I have a few people helping me with that, or I do it myself after the live video. And the people who say, like, who see that share end up saying, hey, I want to actually see this while it's live. And then they end up tuning in to my scheduled time.
That's great.
That's how I grew quickly on Facebook. But YouTube is interesting. So now Facebook, I have about 48,000 followers.
Wow, that's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's growing bigger. So something happened with Facebook in the past few months that they're now incentivizing live video. And I think all of us know what happened. Unfortunately, the pandemic has shocked the world, but in terms of the live video space, it has brought a lot of attention to live video. But YouTube is now paying attention to live video as well.
Yep.
The cool thing about YouTube is I have to do zero work with it when it comes to sharing or distribution, because that's a platform where there's discoverability. So people are searching search terms.
Mhm.
The only thing I need to think about is A, having a steady schedule, which gets people keep tuning in, and B is having a search term that people are searching. So in my case, it's New York City Live. That's
Right.
the basic search term,
Right.
or whatever, Times Square, or if I'm in Boston, Boston so-and-so. And that I now have people randomly bumping into my show while I'm live, even to a hilarious extent where I had a few comments from people saying, I was watching Minecraft videos and suddenly this video popped up, and they're so confused as to why, but they end up getting hooked anyway. So that's why YouTube, I've been able to grow from about 4,000 subscribers before I started live video to now 17,000 subscribers. So
wow, that's really good.
A growth of 13,000 subs in only about 2 months.
Wow, that's great. That's really great. So have you experimented at all with getting together with, like, in the way that you've done it with, large groups on Facebook? Have you had people, like, you go to a neighborhood and there's some local person who is well known in that neighborhood, and you do something with them as a way to get more exposure to your videos?
Yeah, that was my early strategy when I first started Urbanist. So I would collaborate with not just the pages, but also like major museums and major festivals, and they would share my live video whenever I would cover their place.
Oh yeah.
And that was a great way of getting access to their audience as well. And I still do that from time to time. But since we are amidst a global pandemic, most locations are still closed. So that has not been so feasible.
Yeah, right. Of course. Right. Okay. So, well, this is all cool. Like, and when you're doing live streaming, like, you're out there, first of all, you're on your own. It's just you and your phone, and you're moving, like, you have this movement thing going. What are the challenges that you've run into in trying to, have it like an ongoing, like, you're doing this thing and it's just you and it's a live stream?
Yeah, I mean, the challenges are immense because, as you mentioned, I'm walking, talking, doing cinematography because I put a lot of importance in how I move the camera. I believe you can tell a lot of story just by movement.
Right.
And then beyond that, I'm also adding text, photos, sometimes videos, and interacting with the audience and having a conversation, and sometimes telling a greater story about a neighborhood or a piece of architecture while tying it as a conversation piece. So, and then dodging traffic as well. So,
well, yeah, right. Not getting hit by a bus.
So it's quite a lot. Anything can go wrong, and I think that's why people like tuning in. Not necessarily because things go wrong or they want to be a voyeurs to something negative, but I think it's that excitement that you're there with someone in real life, and there's not a super produced show like television, which something can be edited out.
Right.
So how do I contend with all these challenges? One of the challenges that I think is the most central to live video is the liveness of the video. So right here, this type of format is an exception because we're having a conversation. This is an interview. So I also do interviews, and I basically do this format. But when you're doing a live video where it's one person focusing on the live video, then it turns into a conversation. I think that's the beautiful thing about live video. So it's not a lecture, it's not a speech, and it's not a speaking gig as someone might do in a conference. Live video is a conversation. So you're having a conversation with 10 people, 100 people, sometimes in my case, 1,000 people at the same time. That is challenging because it's both a one-to-one. So I am saying hello to Barbara from Minnesota.
Right.
And it's also a one-to-many because I'm also telling a story about Times Square to Barbara and 1,000 other people. That, I think, requires a flexibility in how to tell a story and how to present a tour or any type of thing that happens. Maybe a conversation, maybe a museum walkthrough, maybe a food eating experience. And that requires to have a looseness, so you can't strictly script and you can't strictly have a plan. You have to be more willing to go with the flow of whatever could happen and whatever people ask.
Right. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your technique in storytelling. You know, you're basically this mobile cinematographer, and you're developing a style of what is basically a new form of cinematography. And so what are you discovering as you're doing this?
Great question. So for me, filmmaking is number one for me. I'm a tour guide, maybe third place. It's filmmaking, live streaming, and then tour guide for third place.
Right, there you go.
For me, I focus a lot on the movement. And I think you can convey emotion through motion. So on live streaming, there are certain cinematographic techniques that you can use to enhance the story. And I found a few different shots that really work well on live streaming. For one, I call it the wow shot. So whenever I look at a piece of architecture, I try to move the camera the way I would look up and look around and be like, wow, this is amazing. So the reason I call the wow shot is because every time I do that type of pan up, but I do a pan up that feels more naturalistic because I'm basically following my eye movement. I see that wow face pop up on Facebook. So that's why I end up calling it the wow shot. The other shot that really, really works well and is engaging is what I call the friend shot. So think about this in TV. Whenever a host is speaking, maybe Anthony Bourdain, may he rest in peace, or anyone else who Josh Gates on Discovery Channel. Usually they do this type of shot where it's a walk and talk. So the guy's walking towards the camera and the camera might be walking back at the same time if it's that extensive. And they do that same thing if say Josh Gates is talking to his interview subject. But that works for TV because TV, it's a one-to-many. Friend shot is I put the camera right next to me as if the person is literally walking right next to me or sitting next to me. And that feels like you're there with the person. You're equal to the host. You're not a viewer of the show. You are the show.
Yeah.
And those are two different types of camera techniques I do. The third most basic one, I think, is don't be afraid to move the camera dynamically, because television show, the reasons the camera doesn't move dynamically is because it's a massive setup. So you can't really do a wow shot that easily with a gigantic red dragon camera that a television show might use. And you can't do a friend shot. It's very hard to do, especially with those type of cameras. And then beyond that, if you're doing a YouTube vlog, it just might not fit because, you know, YouTube vlog, you want a little bit more authoritativeness in your cinematic language. So, for example, in one of the shots I do, and I've actually copied a lot from major vloggers as well, like Casey Neistat, and there's a few others that do very excellent types of shots that work well with live streaming. So one of the other one I do is, for example, I want to let in people on a secret and I move the camera close to me. I can't do it right now because I have a DSLR, but I move the camera close to me. And that makes you, you treat the camera as if it were the viewer. So the viewer almost has that subconscious perception of saying like, oh, you're actually telling me a real secret, which is hard to replicate on the television set.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's so interesting. Yeah, and I mean, you can be basically, you know, a human crane. I mean, it's you, the phone, a gimbal. You can do really super low. You can do close up. You can zoom with your feet.
Yeah.
You can do all kinds of stuff. You have complete freedom within the range of how far you can reach with your arm.
Precisely. And another technique you just mentioned about the feet, another technique I use that's borrowed from vloggers is doing those small shots of showing me walking, just like a second of my feet. Or
Sure.
what I do a lot is touching walls. I'm a very kinetic person. I really like touching things, like
Right.
like architecture.
Right.
But even doing that just on with the camera, it's just that kind of like, if you see someone touching something, it feels like you are touching it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you see a shot of the feet, it's an angle that usually doesn't really matter too much. But if you see it for a quick second, you feel like you're there walking with the person as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
That's so great. Well, I mean, a lot of things you can do is, anything you're doing that's creating, an emotional experience, a tactile experience, a very visual experience. Our brains are wired so that we can't tell the difference between watching this thing and it feels like if it feels like we're there, we have that feeling. We get that really visceral experience that whatever it is that you're getting, we're going to get it too, which is why it works so well. That's so great.
Precisely. It's almost, live streaming is almost like a first-person shooter game. Or like a Grand Theft Auto, those video games where you get into the perspective of the person.
Right.
It's
Yeah, well, that's so cool. Like that is very much
Yeah.
what you're doing, and it's a first-person shooter from the form that you're shooting video,
Yeah.
rather than shooting virtual whatevers, and people are right there with you. Like it's a first-person perspective following you along. That's so good. That's so great. Yeah, I love that. So, just in terms of the stories that you are creating and the stories that you're telling, is each episode a standalone, or have you created a series of things? Or like, I know you were here in Boston recently, which, by the way, this is where I live. And so you come to Boston, did you do like, okay, I'm in Boston and here's the series, and join me tomorrow because I'm going to go do this other thing? How do you wrap these episodes together?
Yeah, great question. So I've done a few series. Boston, I did not do it as a series, just because I wanted to be a little bit more loose in Boston. But I've done, for example, when I went to Rome, I did a specific 12-episode series called The Mysteries of the Eternal City.
Okay.
So each episode, I basically left as a cliffhanger to the next one and tried to focus on the storytelling in a way where either the last stop related to the next place where we're going to visit in the next episode. And another series I did was called Hidden History, where I tried to kind of connect stories throughout the 14 episodes I did. And it just, it was an easy way to say, remember, like in episode 1, we talked about this obelisk. So actually, this obelisk was related to this museum now in episode 5. That was it was interesting to do that. It doesn't work too well, unfortunately, I think, on live video, because one interesting aspect about live video is you could do either two types of live video. You could do a live video that's very tight, and it feels like a television show.
Mm-hmm.
So a limited amount of time. And usually, in order to feel a tight live video, I think you have to go either 45 minutes or under. So anywhere between 20 to 45 minutes, I think ends up feeling like a very nice, specific, intentional experience. That the thing with when that happens is you don't have flexibility in other ways. You can't decide to go in a different direction, or you can't decide to tell a interesting story that might be a really fun tangent, or have a spontaneous cup of coffee on live video and talk about coffee.
Right.
That's one type of live video. The second type of live video, I think, is the one I like doing the most, is longer form. So the longer, the better. And they could be, usually I do them about an hour to 2 hours, but sometimes they could go even longer. And you're there just to tune in. So with the first type, people usually see the full thing. They're there for the entire 45 minutes. My previous shows on Rome is a good example of that. Another live streamer who does that is, his name is French Fry in Paris on YouTube. And he's a tour guide, and the videos he does is a tour, but it's virtual.
Yeah.
But for me, when I end up going longer than 45 minutes, I know I cannot expect people to watch the entire thing.
Sure.
So live streaming ends up becoming more like a house party where people drop in and drop out. You know, they come in for a few minutes, might say hi, might want to listen to this segment about the obelisk, and then go on their merry way. I will always have a percentage of followers that will be so hardcore that they'll watch my 4-hour live stream. but that said, since people are dropping in and out, I think a series does not work with that format too well. So if I end up having episodes that are longer than 45 minutes, I cannot expect a series to work, because no one will probably, there'll be a very small percentage of people who will watch the entire 2-hour live stream, because after it's live, 2 hours feels like an eternity when you're searching on YouTube.
Yeah.
I personally don't watch live stream replays because they just seem too long to me.
Right.
Live is best, especially that second type of live video. It's longer. Live is best when it's live.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's so fascinating. I'm wondering, where do you see this going? You know, like, I sort of have a two-part question here. One is, I'm curious to know, like, what results have you seen from doing this? Like, what's been happening to you because of what you're doing? Like, you know, because of my live stream series, this happened. What's the answer to that question?
Well, because of my live stream series, I've become a very good storyteller that can be very spontaneous and doesn't need to rely on the script. So for me, professionally, I've become a better storyteller and filmmaker for that, and writer as well, because I'm able to talk about things spontaneously, and that has a certain magic to it, has a certain spice, certain kick. But I think in terms of as live streaming, not much happened in the first 4 years, to be honest, because people didn't quite know what live video was.
Right.
It was hard to explain to most people. And whenever when I would approach tourism boards or major brands, the majority of them would be saying, okay, yeah, we can maybe do live video, but how big is your Instagram? Take a picture about a photo. Or can you make us a vlog? But now, since there's a lot more, the spotlight's more on live video, I think now people are starting to realize that live video has a huge potential for gaining an audience that is extremely loyal and gets hooked for much longer periods of time than any Netflix show or any TikTok session or any vlog.
Right.
Because when you're there live, you might not realize that you were watching a 4-hour live, and then 4 hours pass by and you're like, God damn, I just watched this guy for 4 hours. He was eating for about 30 minutes of those 4 hours, and I just sat there and talking about the history of avocado toast. That is going to have an extremely massive impact on what type of business one can do in terms of sponsorships and integrations. Because, yeah, integration is nice on the vlog that could, 10 million people can watch, but people could skip over that 1 minute, 30-second integration on the vlog, which I usually do, admittedly. But on live stream, you're there invested with the person. People like what you're doing. People want to listen to you. They want to keep on tuning in. They want to keep on watching that entire live session. So if I have an integration of, say, I visit a Shake Shack and I'm sponsored by Shake Shack, even though the audience might be in the tens of thousands, but not in the millions like a vlogger, that tens of thousands of audience will more likely be buying into that product.
Sure.
And
Yeah,
I
they're
think
way
that's
more
the power of
engaged.
live video. Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
that's really interesting.
and beyond that, live video has enabled me to branch out also to doing live streaming in terms of as a freelance filmmaker. So there's a lot more or right before the pandemic, there was a lot more conferences and more speaking gigs and more virtual performances that were popping up.
Yeah, that's great. That's cool. All right. So what do you think? I mean, given the context that we're now in the world of social distancing and traveling and conferences are not a thing of the present, although they're bound to be a thing of the future.
Yeah.
What are you looking at? Like, what's your coming season look like? Are you like, I'm in New York City, so you have this huge advantage. You're in New York City, so anywhere you turn, there's something interesting to do. That's cool. But I'm just sort of curious as like, well, what do you like? You've had to do a certain amount of shifting, given what's been happening in the last 6 months, both with things are shutting down, so some opportunities aren't there. But on the other hand, there's so much more interest in live video that other things are coming your way. So what does your landscape look like right now?
I've already done 1,000 live videos in New York and over 2,000 live videos in general. And I was looking forward to traveling and doing live videos in Europe specifically. I'm not sure when that's going to happen. So since I am stuck in New York, and especially with the pandemic now rising again, traveling to nearby cities seems a little bit more tedious. So I've been doing something new, or not new, but I've been getting better at doing a type of show which I call a wandering. So rather than literally having like no plan whatsoever, no agenda, just wandering through New York City and somehow telling a story or somehow bumping into interesting encounters with people, with outdoor musicians, with a cafe. And that has been very exciting because I'm only human. So I've gotten bored of telling the same history stories. And
Sure.
I've gotten bored of exploring the same neighborhoods. So with wanderings is I am there for 2 hours. Who knows what could happen? The interesting thing about that is I'm more comfortable with it because I know already a lot about New York City, so I can still add value in terms of stories, in terms of history, anecdotes, in terms of practical information. But beyond that, it's a great challenge to be a storyteller that is not required to have any type of knowledge or story. It's truly being an entertainer in the purest sense, like a host of a party. Might not know everyone. You might not know every single story. You might not plan everything ahead of time, but you have to be there. You have to be fully present. So you have to just show up. So I'm practicing, or I'm getting very good at showing up, being fully present with my audience, and having an adventure.
That's great. Yeah. I mean, I could imagine a version of sort of a live version of Humans 2.0 or something along that nature, or a live version of, Parts Unknown, where, like just whatever you're experiencing, that's what you get to experience. And this is what we're doing. This is what we're doing right now.
Precisely. It's a lot easier with New York City being a canvas. Of course, it might be a little bit more challenging in a smaller city where there's not much going on, but it is uniquely perfect for live video because you can't really meander through a city for 2 hours on any other medium. It just does not work. It works if you write a book like Hemingway did or Anthony Bourdain, but you have to collect all those experiences and then you deliver it as a book.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so people wanting to hook up with your ongoing stuff, going to Urbanist.Live, is that the best way to find you?
The best way to find me is directly on the social media. So YouTube, Urbanist Exploring Cities, and Facebook is Urbanist.Live, and I go live every 1 p.m. Saturday and Wednesdays.
All right, 2 times a week.
Mhm.
Yeah, and roughly like when you're live, if I'm tuning into a Saturday live, this is like a 2-hour experience.
Yeah, for my scheduled ones, I try to keep it around 2 hours maximum. Then I do other spontaneous ones that could run much longer.
That's so great. I love it. I just love it.
Yeah.
Well, someday, this is my wish. I'm going to come down and I want to be with you. I want to join you while
Oh
you're
yeah.
live. That would be so much fun.
Oh, 100%. Let's do it. That'd be fun.
It's so great. Next time, I don't know, like, well, I don't know when I'm coming to New York again, but whenever it's possible, we'll figure that out and make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. No plan whatsoever. No script. We'll do it. We'll do it live.
Okay, I love it. Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. I love it. Like, this is great. Really appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah. All right. So, all right, you guys, we're about to sign off here. I just want to remind you, next Thursday, we'll be going live again, although I won't be the host. We have a special presentation next Thursday with a guest by the name of Neil Patel, who is this, like, if you've never heard of Neil, he's this amazingly knowledgeable guy who knows everything in the world about internet marketing, but he's also been playing around with video. And so he's coming on as a special Restream guest. It's going to be next Thursday at 3 o'clock. So you can look for that on the Restream YouTube channel or the Restream channel on Facebook. That's where you can find that. And I will see you guys next time around.